What's going on, guys? I just wanted to do a quick video here on the 250R with the 450 brakes. I've gotten a few questions, emails about this, and I just think it's worth doing a video on. There's a lot of discussion about it on online forums and Facebook groups and stuff like that, but I just kind of wanted to put it into a video with my thoughts on it and how to go about it. So the only reason this is even on the table to put 450 brakes on the 250R is because the stock brakes, the OEM brakes on a 250R are just ridiculously expensive. So if you're building a 250R from scratch and you don't have the brakes and you have to buy them, it's going to cost you $500 to $600 just to buy OEM brakes that are going to need to be rebuilt, that are going to fight you every bit of the way, and will probably leak again within a year. So this is in my opinion why it's a worthwhile upgrade to go to the newer 450 brakes. You get newer parts, easier to get, and they're a little bit better built. But if you already own a 250R and you have the stock brakes and you've maintained them, you've changed the fluid every year or two, the pistons are in good shape, everything's good, just keep running them. The stock brakes are excellent. They're dual piston calipers, front and rear. You really can't get any better. So the only way I would do 450 brakes is if you have to rebuild your stock brakes, or if you're building one from scratch, or if you just want a slight improvement in braking power. I think the 450 brakes are worth it. So how to go about it, we'll kind of start with the front here. There are a few ways to do this. You can do 04 to 05 450 front brakes. The brakes are the same, the spindles are what changes. I'll get into that in a minute. You could do 06 and up 450 brakes. Again, the calipers are the same, the spindles are different. Or you could do 400EX spindles with Yamaha YFZ calipers. The YFZ 450 calipers or Raptor 700 calipers are the same. Will bolt right up to a 400EX spindle. So you could do that as well. And then finally, what you could do if you really wanted to get crazy is find some Lone Star spindles that are meant for a TRX 450 but are LTR geometry. That would give you the best handling and braking, in my opinion, for a 250, but that's also kind of overkill. And I think most people, unless you're an A-class racer, would not be able to tell the difference between any one of those setups. So for me, I like the 04 to 05 TRX 450 setup. And I'll explain that right now. So basically on the TRX 450, the front calipers, which these are TRX 450 calipers, are the exact same from 04 to 2014. So it doesn't matter what you get, the calipers are the same, the pads are the same. There you go. What changes is the spindles. So the 04 to 05 TRX 450 is kind of the desired front end. A lot of people with newer TRX 450s go back to the older style front end because it gives you a little bit better geometry. And by that, it gives you better turning radius, and from what I know, throughout the suspension travel, so throughout full droop and full compress, it will give you the best contact patch with the tire to the ground. That's why the 04 to 05 is preferred. The 06 and up is still really good. It's a little bit less than the 04 to 05. And then the 400EX spindle is pretty much almost identical in geometry to the 06 and up 450. I know it can get really confusing. So the cheapest way to do it, in my opinion, would be to get a set of 400EX spindles with YFZ 450 or Raptor 700 calipers. That would give you updated spindles with modern dual piston caliper front brakes. You could run 400EX spindles with 400EX front calipers. Those would just be single piston calipers. They're still pretty good. They wouldn't be as good as stock 250 brakes, in my opinion. So there's a bunch of different ways of combinations you can do this. In my opinion, if you can't find a full kit, like if you can't find an 04 to 05 like part out that someone's selling the spindles and the calipers together, or an 06 and up spindles with the calipers and everything together, then just piece together your own kit. read up on it. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Again, the most affordable way to get a good front end, in my opinion, would be a 400EX spindle with YFZ calipers. For me, I think it was worth the extra time to find 04 to 05 spindles with 04 to 05 brakes, even though they're the same. So that's what I did on this one. On the white 250R that I built, if you guys remember, I did 06 and up. So those are 06 and up spindles with 06 and up brakes. You know, again, brakes are the same. So that's kind of it for the front end. On the Roll Design A-arms that I have, Jed at Roll Design, or wherever you buy them, they're gonna ask you what front end you have. They're gonna ask if you're running a TRX250R front end, a 400EX front end, or a 450R front end, and they're gonna want to know the year, because they'll actually custom make the little uprights here, or kingpins, however you want to call them. They'll custom make them for the spindles. So again, that's kind of where I'm at on the front end. I hope this answers some of your guys' questions or curiosity on the 450 setup on the front. Again, any of the Honda stuff the tapers for the lower and upper ball joints are the same. It'll bolt right on. Any aftermarket A-arm, from Full Flight to American Star to Lone Star, Hauser, Walsh, Roll Design, it's all going to be the same deal. I do think it's a worthwhile upgrade. Again, easier to get rebuild parts for. It's cheaper, and it kind of does stop a little better. So that's the front. The rear is where it gets a little weirder, and I'll actually run inside to my parts bin and get something that I want to show you guys. But so on the rear, the brake is the same from 04 to 14 as well. The caliper and the rotor is the same. So on the rear of the 250R, what you're going to want is the 250R axle carrier, which is this guy right here. You're going to want the 250R carrier. You're going to want a 250R axle. I've heard you could use a 400EX axle and probably accomplish the same thing, but how I'm going to explain this is how I'm doing it, and how I think is the way to do it. So 250R carrier, 250R axle. Then you're going to want a TRX250 brake stay, which is just pretty much the caliper mounting bracket. In my case, the brake stay is also a rotor guard that I got from GT Thunder, or Hess Motorsports, I'm sorry. So you want the TRX250 brake stay, TRX250 caliper, and TRX250 pads. And then on this particular quad, I have a TRX250 anti-fade and a TRX250 rotor. And in order to use this setup, you have to use some washers here between the brake stay and the caliper, just to move the caliper over a smidge. That way the rotor will ride in the middle of the pads. And then once you have that, you have an updated rear end that is cheap to do and easy to get parts for. If you want to find especially the rear caliper is ridiculous. A 250R rear caliper, not even in working condition, one that's leaking, that looks like it's sat in a barn for 25 years, is going to cost $300 to $350. And you'll still have to rebuild it and fight with it. And the rear calipers are notorious for the slide sticking, and they are a pain in the ass. So I highly recommend, if you're going to do the 450 brakes, I would for sure, no matter what, just do the rear. Don't even, if your fronts are fine, that's cool, but the rear is almost just worth it to go ahead and do it. This caliper I actually bought new on eBay. There's a guy selling NOS, and NOS means new old stock. 450R calipers, I believe it was 150 bucks, brand new, in the box, in a Honda box. So that is for sure the way to go. It is a single piston, it's a large single piston, and it's a floating caliper, so really good setup. And yeah, now what I will do here is I'll pause it and I'll run inside and go grab this other part I want to show you guys. If you want to use a 250R if you want to keep the cost down even more than what I've done here, you can use a 450R stock axle nut. You don't need to buy one of these expensive anti-fades. I like them. I do think they work, and I also think it makes it easier to service the quad because then it just condenses everything into one part. Instead of having a few separate parts, you have one part, and all you got to do is loosen this lock nut and loosen the nut in order to remove all the components. You don't have to use a big wrench or anything to break those axle nuts loose. So I like anti-fade setup, but you could use a stock TRX250 axle nut setup or a 250R axle nut setup. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop it right now. I'm gonna go grab something else and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. So again, if you wanted to keep costs down, all you would really need to do is to get a 450R brake stay, a 450R caliper, and you can use the 250R like axle nut and 250R rotor. And how you're going to do this is you need to either buy this spacer, and you can buy the spacer from BDT. I know a lot of people don't like BDT Motorsports. That's kind of a topic for another video maybe or something, but I have no problem buying hard parts from them. I probably would just never have work done by them. You can hear a lot of bad things about them, but they're good to buy hard parts from. So this spacer, you need to either buy a spacer or you need to have a friend or a machinist make this for you. And then you can use the stock 250R axle nut, or in my case, a 250R anti-fade with a stock 250R rotor. So you can use this, and the reason you need the spacer is because when you put the 250R setup on, this actually sits more inboard, if that makes sense, without the spacer. And in order to get this to where it needs to be for the 450R caliper, that spacer will space out the hub where the seals ride on the carrier. It spaces it out where it needs to be for the 250R setup to work with a 450 caliper. So I kind of hope that makes sense for you guys. Again, if you wanted to save whatever, $100 to $200 instead of buying a 450 anti-fade and rotor, you can spend 20 bucks and use your existing rotor and axle nut setup. So that's where you can do all that. In my opinion, I think it's worth just to go full 450. You eliminate a few extra parts and pieces. You have all new components. So that's where I am at with that. Again, if you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I think that pretty much covers it. I think it's a worthwhile upgrade, improved stopping power, modern parts, with OEM quality. So there we go. Thank you guys for watching.